Santa Clara embarrassed Gonzaga in Spokane last year. How can Mark Few and company make sure that doesn't happen again this Thursday?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Folks, if you've been thinking about taking the next step, now is the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege and you'll get 15% off your first order for a limited time. Rugiet ready, feel present, feel confident, and feel ready. Folks, we got a jam-packed show today talking about this Santa Clara team as we get ready for Gonzaga's matchup against the one of three undefeated teams in the WCC so far this conference season. We're going to meet this Broncos team, talk about what they have done well this year, talk about some of the key players on Coach Herb Sendek's roster. We're also going to talk about what Gonzaga needs to do to get themselves a victory on Thursday night. We'll talk about that three-point shooting fiasco last year, at least in terms of defending the three-point line. We'll talk about that and a few other keys for the Zags. And then we're going to close out the show taking a look at the 2027 class rankings. Rivals updated their class rankings, and Gonzaga's lone commit in the class was a big riser. We'll also talk about a few other targets for Gonzaga in that class as well. We start the show getting you ready for Thursday's late night showdown with the Santa Clara Broncos. This game on January 8th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. It'll be broadcast on ESPN2. So I know I say this every time we have a late game. A shout out to those New York area Gonzaga basketball fans who listen to the show. It's going to be a late one. Going to have plenty of coffee. Even if you're on the West Coast, going to have a lot of coffee to get ready. 8:30 is about as late as it gets for a tip-off time for Gonzaga. And I think we might want to start getting used to this. Certainly don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Pac-12 has a lot of late games for Gonzaga in that new conference. Now, obviously, a handful of the teams Gonzaga is playing will be in a earlier time zone than the Pacific time zone, like Colorado and Utah State, respectively, for both of those teams. But I wouldn't be surprised if CBS and the other media partners are looking at getting some of these games late so they can have some late night programming the way that ESPN has really valued having Gonzaga and St. Mary's and Gonzaga and Santa Clara and Gonzaga in San Francisco when they play on ESPN, often on these late tip times because they want to fill that time slot. So something to keep an eye on going forward. Gonzaga's 51-6 all time against Santa Clara, but that doesn't really matter because they're 2-2 in their last four games when it has mattered the most in terms of our recent evaluation. Herb Sendek's team has been on the rise, and while Gonzaga has not been in free fall, they certainly haven't dominated the conference as much as we're used to. In fact, have not won the WCC in each of the last 2 years, and part of that has been this pair of losses to Santa Clara. They lost at home last year, 103-99. We all remember that absolute fiasco from Gonzaga defensively. They also lost at Santa Clara the previous year. That was a game that Anton Watson went crazy. I think he had 35 or 37 in that game, something along those lines. But unfortunately, not enough of the rest of the team stepped up for the Zags, and they dropped that one on the road. And Santa Clara is going to be a real threat again. This is a darn good basketball team. I think at this point, pretty clearly the third best team in the WCC behind Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And Gonzaga has struggled with teams that are not as good as Santa Clara in the not too distant past with St. Mary's, or with San Diego and Seattle. So they're going to have to play much more like they did against Pepperdine and LMU, and really in the first 10 or so games of the season in order to secure a victory here. The Broncos 13-4 on the year. They're 4-0 in conference play. 3 of their wins are against top 100 teams, according to KenPom. That would be McNeese, very, very good mid-major team. Nevada, both those games were at home for Santa Clara, and they also beat Minnesota on a neutral site. Perhaps their most impressive win is a team that's just outside the top 100. That is Xavier. They are 106th, but Santa Clara won this game on the road. They went to a Big East program and thrashed this Xavier team. They ended up winning by 21 points, which in and of itself is a very impressive win over a power conference team, but they were up 30 late in the second half of this game. The actual margin of victory doesn't do justice for how dominant Santa Clara was against the Musketeers. And yes, Xavier's not a great team, and the Big East is not a great conference this year, but anytime you beat a team by 20 plus on the road, it's a good win. Beating a power conference team by 30 or by 20 plus on the road and being up by 30 is incredibly impressive for this Broncos team. Like we said, they're 4-0 in conference play, but it's worth pointing out they have not played the best of the best in the WCC. All 4 of their wins are against teams outside the top 200 at KenPom currently. 2 of them were road wins. One of them was at Oregon State. That's not an easy place to get a W, even if this is not as good of a Beavers team as last year's squad. They also won at Portland, and then they won home games against 2 of the worst teams in the league in San Diego and Pepperdine. Now, for the Broncos, they do have a brutal loss on their resume, a catastrophic loss to Loyola Chicago. That is a quad 4 loss for Santa Clara. I mean, it does not get more devastating than that. Loyola Chicago's 274th at the net right now, at KenPom right now, similar in the net rankings. It's a resume ending loss for Santa Clara. Once they lost that game, their chances of making the NCAA tournament as an at-large bid shrank to nothing. You cannot have that on your resume for Santa Clara. Their other losses, not nearly as bad. They did lose to New Mexico by 27 points. It was a road game, so in a vacuum, not a terrible loss, but 27-point loss is never good. Their other 2 losses are to a very good St. Louis team by just 1 point and a also quite good Arizona State team on a neutral site. That game they lost by just 3 points. Presently, Santa Clara is 55th at KenPom. That is a huge 50-spot climb from where they began the season. In the preseason, they were at 105th. So again, 50 spots higher than where they were before the season began. Adjusted offensive efficiency for them is 50th. Adjusted defensive efficiency is 90th. So a better offensive team than a defensive team. Not a big shock for Coach Sendek's-led clubs. Tempo-wise, they're 83rd. So they play at a bit quicker pace than most of the teams Gonzaga has squared off against this year. There's a quad 2 opportunity for Gonzaga as Santa Clara sits at 62 in the net. They're 0-2 in their quad 1 games, 4-1 in quad 2, 4-0 in quad 3. But like we said, they got that devastating quad 4 loss, so 4-1 in those games. Gonzaga is projected to win this thing by 15 points, according to KenPom, 89-74. And again, for Santa Clara, the big storyline for them, as it often is the outside shooting. But this is an unusual team. They have some very good three-point shooters, but they're not really a very good three-point shooting team because they also have some very bad three-point shooters, and they take a whole crap load of three-point attempts. They're currently shooting 33.2%, according to KenPom. That is 199th in the country. So they are just barely a top 200 team in the nation as the three-point shooters. So that's not great for them, but they average 10 makes per game, specifically 9.9 makes per game on 30.3 attempts. They are averaging the 19th most three-point attempts per game in all of college basketball. However, they are just 52nd in makes per game because they're not shooting it at a very high clip, but they're going to take a whole lot of them. That is what we can expect to see from this team on Thursday night. They have 7 players who are attempting 3 or more threes per game, but again, the results vary quite a lot. 3 of those 7 players are shooting over 35%, including Christian Hammond, their best player, their best scorer, who's shooting 41.5% from 3. But then 2 of those guys, they're not just shooting under 30% from 3. They have 2 guys who are attempting more than 3.5 threes per game who are shooting under 25%. That includes Brenton Napper, who is shooting 23.3% on the year on over 3.5 attempts per game. A lot of guys who love to shoot the 3 ball, some guys who are knocking them down at a high clip, some guys who are very much not knocking them down at a high clip. Should make for an interesting game and an interesting storyline in this contest on Thursday. Some names to know for Santa Clara. We already mentioned Christian Hammond. He's averaging 17 points, 2.5 assists, 1.3 steals per game, shooting 41.5% from 3. The returning leading scorer from last year's team is Elijah Mahi. He's averaging about 15 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists, shooting 36.5% from 3. Alan Graves is coming off the bench, one of the best sixth men in the conference, averaging 8.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2 assists, and 2 steals per game. He's gotten a low volume, but he is shooting 38% from three. And then got to give a shout out to Thierry Darlan. Thierry Darlan is averaging 7.5 points and 4 rebounds per game, but Darlan was the first G League player to commit to a college basketball program. He broke the mold in that way. He had been recruited by Santa Clara prior to deciding to go straight into the G League, played for the Ignite 2 years ago, played for the Rip City Remix last year, the affiliate of the Portland Trailblazers, and now playing for Santa Clara. And coming off the bench, averaging 7.5 points per game. I think a lot of, we won't get all the way into this, but a lot of the panic about these G Leaguers coming to college basketball is that they're just going to come out and dominate. Most of the guys who are not quite good enough to stick around in the G League probably aren't going to come dominate college basketball. Darlan's a good player, but he's certainly not a world beater at the collegiate level. Still somebody Gonzaga is going to have on their scouting report prior to this game. Well, folks, we remember what happened last year. And if you don't, that's probably for the best. It was not fun to watch Santa Clara just shoot 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. And that is the biggest key for this matchup on Thursday. Can Gonzaga adequately defend the perimeter? We'll talk about that. Some other things they need to do well to make sure they start with a 5-0 record in conference play. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, Fridays, they already feel different during college basketball season. FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action begins. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open up the FanDuel app during happy hour and always brings you something new. There's new boosts, there's new bonuses, there's new surprises, and it's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before that window closes. Plus, the timing is perfect. It's right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds some extra energy to your Friday night basketball without you having to overthink it. Gonzaga's odds to make the Final Four have dropped. Not a shock there. They're now at plus 380. Might be a good time to toss some cash down, folks. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. And we're still getting you ready for Thursday night's matchup between Gonzaga and Santa Clara. The final time Gonzaga will host Santa Clara at the McCarthey Athletic Center while they are both in the same conference. We talked a little bit about this Santa Clara team, what they're doing well this year. What we want to do now is take a look at 5 keys to victory. These are 5 things Gonzaga needs to do well in this game on Thursday to make sure they get themselves a W at home. We'll take a look at these things here. Number 1, again, this was the big storyline last year. This is what I know is the main focus for fans this year going into this game. Gonzaga's got to defend the perimeter. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Santa Clara made 13 consecutive threes in that game against Gonzaga last year. They scored 103 points the first time. I know this for a fact. It's the first time Gonzaga's given up 100 points to an opponent at the McCarthey Athletic Center ever. 22-year history of that building. They'd never done it until last year when Santa Clara dropped 103 on them. It looked like Gonzaga was going to get beat by 15, 20 points. They ended up making it a 4-point game late in that contest, but can't give up 100 points and expect to win. Santa Clara is not as good of a 3-point shooting team as they were last year, but they have shooters and they're going to shoot a lot of threes. So defending the perimeter and not giving them good open looks is paramount, critical, crucial for Gonzaga to win this game. While Santa Clara does not have as good of 3-point shooters on the roster, the flip side of that is that Gonzaga has much better perimeter defenders, much better, much better. So it's really going to be about containment and it's going to be about strategy. It's going to be about Gonzaga kind of what they choose to do. What happened last year is that Gonzaga was so worried about the dribble drive. They were so worried about letting Adama Alpha-Ball get into the paint, letting Carlos Stewart get into the paint where they don't have a lot of rim protection, that they were pinching in on the outside shooters. So let's say it's Ryan Nemhard was guarding Adama Alpha-Ball, ball starts to drive, Nolan Hickman pinches in to try to double or try to knock the ball loose to try to prevent ball from getting a driving lane to the rim. Ball kicks it out to Tyree Bryan or whomever, and they knock down a 3. That happened time and time again in that game. Gonzaga has much more length on the perimeter this year. They've replaced Ryan Nembhard and Nolan Hickman with Braden Smith and Mario St-Superi at the point guard positions. They add in a Jalen Worley. They add in a Tyon Grant Foster. I mean, the length is significant. Emmanuel Nchente was not a part of the regular rotation during this game last year. He joined the regular rotation the game after this when Mark Few decided enough is enough. We need better perimeter defenders. So you're going to have an improved and more comfortable in Nchente. You're going to have significantly better, taller, more athletic physical wings in Grant Foster and Worley. You're going to have Mario and Smith are, similar sized guards to Nembhard and Hickman, but they are better defenders than those two guys were. And you're going to have an Adam Miller, who's an underrated defensive player who's been playing really well on that end of the floor the last couple of weeks in particular. Combine all that with the fact that this Santa Clara team is just not as good as a three-point shooting team. Yeah, you got to watch out for Hammond, 41.5% on 4.5 attempts per game. You got to watch out for Elijah Mahi, 36.5% on 5 attempts per game. You got to watch out for Jake Emsinger, 35% on about 3 attempts per game. Like, they got dudes. And if those guys get hot, it's going to be a problem. But ultimately, Gonzaga is far better equipped to defend an inferior three-point shooting team. So this certainly doesn't look like it's going to be as big of a problem, but I wouldn't rule it out. It's certainly going to be a big thing Gonzaga's focusing on this week to prepare for this matchup. Key number 2 for Gonzaga, you got to get back to dominating down low. Gonzaga sort of went away from this kind of inexplicably early in the game against LMU. They ended up figuring it out. But in the first 5 minutes of that game against LMU, they were already 1 of 7 from 3. We're not taking any interior shots because LMU's defense was packing in the paint and just daring Gonzaga's guards to shoot. And again, I think Mark Few I certainly would never question his offensive coaching strategy in general. He's a prolific offensive coach. He's one of the best to ever do it. But a part of their strategy and their system is to take what the defense gives you. And so a lot of times what we see defenses do is they say, well, we're going to give you the 3-point shot, because we can't defend Graham Ike or Braden Huff one-on-one in the post. We know that doubling them once they get the ball often doesn't work because they can swing it out to open shooters, or they can get some dribble drives off of that. So instead, we're going to just do everything we can to stop them from getting the ball. And if that leaves you wide open from 3, we'll live with that. And Gonzaga decided to do that in that game against LMU. They shot 1 of 7, and they didn't shoot it well against Seattle U. And Seattle U was less preventing the bigs from getting the ball, but they were swarming them with double and triple teams. And often Gonzaga's shooters weren't relocating very well. And even when they did, Seattle's defense was just swarming to be able to get out and cover those shots. Gonzaga went, I think, 5 games in a row shooting 37% or better from 3, and shot really poorly in those games. I think they need to get back to shooting the 3 ball well. We'll get to that in a second. But mostly they need to just find a way to pound the ball down low. Get the ball to Graham, get the ball to Braden, let those 2 dudes go to work. Do not settle for outside shots just because that is what Santa Clara is giving you. Work the ball around, let your bigs relocate, let them fight for position, let them fight for repositioning, and get them the dang rock so they can go score. Santa Clara does have legitimate size. This is something that they possess that most teams in the WCC do not possess. Bukky Oboye is a big player for Santa Clara, big in the sense of the matchup, big in the sense that he is 7'1". He is a big dude, and he averages 1.5 blocks per game. Now, he only plays 17.5 minutes per game, which makes the 1.5 blocks pretty impressive, but it also makes the 3.3 fouls per game rather alarming. He commits a whole ton of fouls. Graham has struggled with size. He has struggled with legit 7-footers in the past, but he did not struggle against Rick Asanza and LMU on Sunday. So there's no real indication that he will struggle with Oboye in this game, but that is a big time factor, is how these dudes do in one-on-one coverage if Santa Clara chooses to play them one-on-one, making sure they can get their shots up. But the biggest thing for Gonzaga is letting those guys get those looks. And then the next biggest thing for them is you got to be efficient from the 3-point line as well. And again, you want to focus on getting the ball down low. You don't want to settle for outside shots just because that happens to be what's open. Work the possession, work the ball around, try to get the ball down low. But if they're swarming the bigs with double teams and you're kicking it out and you're an open shooter, you got to knock those down too. Gonzaga shot 37.5% or better in 7 consecutive games. In fact, before the Seattle U and LMU games where they shot 22 and 30% respectively, they were in 40% in 6 of those 7 games and 50% in 2 of those games. Since the Michigan game, Gonzaga has shot the absolute crap out of the basketball. And while it faded in these last two games, we know this is a darn good three-point shooting team. If you are one of Gonzaga's shooters, if you are Steel Venters on a relocation kick out from Graham Ike, or if you are Adam Miller, if you are Mario Saint-Superi, if you are Braden Smith, knock them down, fire away, lights out, let it fly. If you are anybody else, maybe we work the ball down low. Gonzaga has an issue of the wrong players taking too many shots. Grant Foster taking too many threes. I know he knocked one down in the last couple of games, but not a strength of his, although he has shot it better in conference play. Still not something I want to see a ton of from him. Graham Ike and Braden Huff probably taking too many threes in these games. I'm not saying it's zero, but they're settling too often. This Gonzaga team can be a very efficient three-point shooting team, and while they don't need to rely on it, they need to be efficient when they do choose to take those shots. Key number 4 for Gonzaga, and it kind of goes along with these first two keys, or these next two keys of dominating down low and not settling for too many outside shots, which is take and make a lot of free throws. Santa Clara allows opponents to get to the free throw line a ton. They have given up 363 free throw attempts this season. That is 323rd in college basketball. It means they're giving up more free throw attempts than all but about 30 teams in college basketball. They are surrendering 21.4 free throw attempts per game. Against some of the better teams they have played, that number is even higher. Xavier shot 34 free throws. Yes, Santa Clara won that game, but Xavier shot 34 free throws. Nevada shot 28. Minnesota shot 27. New Mexico shot 24. Both North Texas and Oregon State shot 27. Teams get to the line a bunch against this Santa Clara team. Now, Gonzaga is not a good free throw shooting team. In fact, they are now down to below 70% on the season. They're at 69.9%. That's 251st in the country. They are a below average to actively bad free throw shooting team. But they do get to the line a lot. In fact, they have 352 attempts at the line, which is 89th in college basketball. So a top 100 team in terms of getting to the free throw line, just not a very good team at actually converting from the line. But the key here is going to be Graham Ike. Because Graham Ike, while he's down from where he was last year, he's still at about 75% on the season, and he is very good at drawing contact, very good at getting fouled. Meanwhile, he's going up against a guy in Bukky Oboye, who again commits 3.5 fouls per game in just 17 minutes. Graham's going to get to the line. He's going to get to the line often. And getting their bigs in foul trouble, because they don't have a ton of depth in the front court, is going to be very, very important. So even if Graham's not making his free throws at a super high clip, just getting fouled will test Santa Clara's depth and is a big positive for Gonzaga. But it would be nice if the team also made their free throws, because their other best player in terms of getting to the line is Grant Foster, and he's just not a good free throw shooter. He's just not good at actually converting from the stripe. Those two guys are going to be critical in this game, but it's going to be important for Huff to get to the line and make those free throws as well. It would be nice to see some of the other drivers on this team, whether that's Saint-Superi or Smith or Adam Miller, getting to the line as well. And then key number 5 in this game for Gonzaga, take care of the basketball. Got a couple stats here from the great Ken Pomeroy and his website, KenPom. Gonzaga turns the ball over 14.1% of the time. That is the 21st best mark in college basketball. They were one of the 25 best teams in the country in terms of avoiding turnovers. However, Santa Clara forces turnovers 20.7% of the time, which is the 34th best mark in college basketball. So you have a top 25 team in the country in terms of avoiding turnovers going up against a defense that is top 35 in the country at forcing turnovers. That's the matchup right there. What is going to win out in this game between Santa Clara's very good defense that they average 9 steals per game. 9.3 steals per game. That's 38th best in the country. Their steal rate is nearly 13%. That's huge. This team gets a ton of steals. This is something you're very, very good at. Meanwhile, Gonzaga does not turn the ball over a lot. It has not been a weakness for Gonzaga this year. So that to me feels like amongst the low post presence, rebounding, which is always a big thing, the turnover margin and Santa Clara's ability to get steals feels like a huge key in terms of how this game plays out on Thursday night. You need both Braden Smith and Mario Saint-Superi playing well, taking care of the basketball, not making stupid mistakes. The only other guard on this roster who averages more than a turnover per game is Grant Foster. So you'd like to see him tighten that up as well. Well, folks, we'll have one more show talking more about this Santa Clara matchup on Thursday before the game. But right now, we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at Rivals' updated 2027 recruiting class rankings. Gonzaga's lone commit in the class, Dooney Johnson, was among the biggest risers on their updated list. We're going to talk about that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, we're going to talk about something that most men don't bring up, but really should. Stress from work, money, life, it just doesn't turn off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body, so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. The science behind Rugiet Ready really stands out. There's 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You connect with a board-certified doctor online, and everything ships discreetly to your door. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Ready, feel present, and feel confident. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're closing out the show looking at some recruiting ranking updates. We're talking 2027 class here, not Gonzaga's upcoming 2026 class, which includes 3 4-star recruits in 6'5" German guard Jack Cahill, 6'6" wing Luca Foster, and 7' center Sam Funches. Very excited to have all 3 of those players on campus for Gonzaga's first year in the Pac-12 in 26-27. But Rivals recently updated their 2027 class rankings. This is the 4th full update they have done with their top 150 rankings for the 2027 class. It is based on their high school seasons up to this point. Obviously, we've seen quite a bit of basketball from these guys in the regular high school season, also some early season tournaments, some films, some different evaluations have changed the rankings for this 2027 class. It was written up by Jamie Shaw of On3. Gonzaga has 1 commit in the 2027 class already. They have 1 player who has taken an official visit, who is a strong pursuit for Gonzaga, and then they have 3 other players they have been in the mix as well. And right now, all 5 of those players make up part of the top 25 for this 2027 class. So this is a 20% 25% of the class is players. 20%. I can do math. 20% is of the top 25 are players that Gonzaga is pursuing. 1 who they have already landed a commitment from. We'll start there. That is Dooney Johnson. We'll start there not only because he is the lone commit for Gonzaga in this group, because he is the highest ranked player out of this group for the Zags. He is a 6'5" guard from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, currently playing at Milwaukee Juneau High School. He committed to Gonzaga in late October. He took an official visit to Spokane to watch the Zags take on Western Oregon in an exhibition game. Committed a few days later, recently reaffirmed that commitment in a post on Instagram. I think it was on January 1st, a New Year's post, once again celebrating his commitment to Gonzaga. Very talented player, very good scorer, very good defensive player as well. Has been off to a great start this year for Milwaukee Juneau High School. He was at number 25 in their last update. He has moved all the way up to number 16, folks. He is a borderline top 15 player in the 2027 class. Great for Gonzaga to already have him locked up for this, not next year's class, but for the year after's recruiting class. Next up for Gonzaga is Gene Roebuck III. We mentioned Roebuck here because while he is at number 25, which is the lowest out of these 5 players, he is up 12 spots from where he was previously at number 37, and he has already taken an official visit to Gonzaga. We know the Zags are very invested in his recruitment. Roebuck is a 6'5" wing from La Mirada, California. He took an official visit to Gonzaga on November 3rd for their season opening win against Texas Southern. And he had a nice quote in an article written again by Jamie Shaw of On3, talking about his recruitment. And when asked about Gonzaga, he said, quote, "I talk with at least one of the coaches almost every day, Coach Brian Michelson, Coach Zach Norvell, Coach RJ Barsh. I talk to them every day, so they really believe in me." Now, Roebuck is going to be a tough sell for Gonzaga because he is being pursued by some of the best programs in his home state. He's already taken official visits to both UCLA and USC. Also taken an official visit to Cal and has offers from Kansas, Arizona State, San Francisco, Fullerton, and CSUN as well. But definitely a player to keep an eye on. I know Gonzaga's staff is really highly interested in Roebuck. I think more than anybody else in this class, outside of course, Dooney Johnson. So definitely a player to keep tabs on as his recruitment develops. 3 other players Gonzaga is interested in. They're all bunched together in the updated top 150 from Rivals. DeMarcus Henry is at number 19. Jalen Davis is at number 20. And Darius Wobington is at number 22. Henry's a 6'6" small forward. He's currently playing at Compass Prep High School, the same high school that Davis Fogel played his senior year of high school at. Henry's been long considered a likely Ohio State commitment just because his older brother and older sister are both currently at Ohio State, but a player to keep an eye on, especially playing at Compass Prep right now. Jalen Davis is a local kid, a 6'3" point guard from Bremerton, Washington. He moved up 1 spot from 21 to 20. The Zags offered him early, but there's a lot of other schools very heavily involved. There's no visit scheduled, at least not to my knowledge. Washington, very heavily involved in keeping him in the state as well. Texas Tech is in the mix for Jalen Davis. So is Stanford. So is Oregon as well. And then last but not least, Darius Wobington, 6'9" center from Sunny Slope High School in Phoenix, Arizona. He has moved up 1 spot as well from number 23 to number 22. The Zags visited him down in Arizona. They're invested in him as a recruit as well. He's, again, a 6'9" big. He can space the floor. He's got good ball handling skills, really good footwork around the rim. You watch like 5 minutes of tape on Darius Wobington, and you'll see why Gonzaga likes him. He looks very much like a Gonzaga style big, but there's a lot of competition here as well. Washington, like they're in on Jalen Davis. They're also very invested in Wobington, have made a big push to try to bring him out to Seattle. Arizona State, trying to keep him in the state of Arizona. They got an offer out as well. Louisville and Texas, also some pretty big name programs in the mix here as well. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Again, we'll be back with one more show previewing that matchup against Santa Clara. Got a fun one lined up for you all on Thursday. We'll, of course, recap that game on Friday's show as well. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And, of course, as always, go Zags.